In just the past 24 hours, conspiracy claims are ripping big rifts in between the MAGA movement and just anybody with some kind of common sense in general. A conservative icon's assassins now facing the death penalty, and the Fed just cut rates for the first time under major political pressure in a year. And late night TV is being pulled off the air amid free speech concerns. Let's break it all down. Welcome to the Middle Ground, Mike. Let's kind of touch a little bit on Candace Owens. I posted a little bit about X on this. X seems to be the one platform where I don't get flagged for certain things. She's made several controversial allegations since Charlie Kirk's death. Among them, she's claimed that hedge fund manager Bill Ackman staged private intervention to push Kirk. He said that he did not. He released some of the text messages with Kirk, asserting there was no coercion or blackmail. From what I read, but Candace Owens is still standing by her claims, despite pushback from Kirk's allies and even attendees who were there at the event, who say her narrative is fabricated. And from the reports that I have read, is that Turning Point USA is not okay with what she is saying, and they said it is completely fabricated themselves. So, and there's also follow with Pastor Rob McCoy, who publicly rebuked Candace Owens' claims, saying the statements are conspiracy theories and defending Kirk's reputation. I know she has come out and said that he was converting to Catholicism from Protestant. She essentially called Protestant people stupid. I don't think it was that deep, but that is kind of what happened. I would, if I was Candace Owens and I had these smoking guns that she says that she has, I would put them out in a timely manner, like lay it all out. Boom, boom, boom. Not your opinion on it. Lay out the credible evidence if you say that it's there. I'm not saying one way or another because obviously I have not seen it. Do I think Israel, the government killed Charlie Kirk? No. But, crazy things happen, right? So if she's got evidence that, I encourage her, just put that stuff out there. If you've got it and there's things going on that the world should know about, give us the evidence if you have it. Do the right thing. I get that you're hurt about what happened to Charlie. I think everybody is, but we got to be balanced on this. We can't just do this out of rage, and you've got to lead more than what just has been put out there. Charlie Kirk's murder case, a conservative influence, obviously he was shot on September 10th. They're now saying Tyler Robinson, 22. There is text messages out there, between him and his partner. He reportedly expressed leftist ideology. There's text messages saying it. He's saying that he had enough of Charlie's hatred, which, there's some things you don't got to agree with on him. There's things that I don't agree with on him, but I guess maybe I just never interpreted anything he said as hate. If that young man did, that's a bummer for him. You should never let someone's words drive you to that point because it's not healthy for you. According to the FBI, the DNA found on the gun was linked to Robinson. It's rumored. I don't know if anybody's seen any complete proof yet. I know they did charge him with aggravated murder and felony discharge of a firearm, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and a violent offense in the presence of a child. They're seeking the death penalty. I think anybody, regardless of political party affiliation, things of this nature, rape, things like this, should just be a death penalty. We should not give them a platform to stand on. It is just a problem. These folks, we've got to figure out a way to deter it. This kid obviously had some mental issues going on. Like a lot of people who do these crimes, and these murders and these assassinations, generally when you read some of the things, it seems like they had mental problems going on. I'm not saying that it makes it okay or justifying or excusing anything. It's just maybe if we had more access to mental institutions, maybe we could hopefully catch some of this sooner. But that's just my humble opinion. Again, it's an opinion. The Federal Reserve rate cuts. They did lower a quarter point. I put that out earlier today too. The signs of a weakening job market. They reduced the overall job numbers by over, I believe, 900,000 for the last year. So that's between both presidents' terms, President Biden and President Trump, which is concerning. So now the basis target is now 4 to 4.25. Inflation is still elevated, but there are increasing worries about economic growth. The tariffs are putting pressure on that, right? But something had to give because the average American's wage was not matching the pace of inflation. So something had to happen. I'm not advocating anybody ever losing a job, nothing like that, but something had to happen because it was getting out of balance and it was only going to get worse. Do I know the full length of it? No, I don't. I'm sure there's people out there smarter than me. They're probably going to say, hey, you're full of crap. But you know what? I'm an average everyday American and I know what I see with my own eyeballs and when I buy something. He's been trying to push out the one federal governor, Lisa Cook. But I believe the courts put a temporary block on that. You know, Stephen Myron, I think that's how you say his last name, recently affirmed he was appointed by Trump. He advocated for a 50 basis point cut, which put more in line with how Trump thinks. But hey, at least we're making some kind of progress, finding the middle. The court blocked Trump's attempt to remove Lisa Cook, though. So we'll see where we go from here. According to what they're saying is the Fed is projected to do 2 more quarter point rate cuts before the year end. Could they be bigger based on the political pressure and based on the economic conditions? They could be. I would not be surprised if we've seen a half point cut at one time and then maybe another quarter point cut to just kind of maybe kick things into gear because, as you go towards the middle of the winter, things slow down. So, they may be trying to just light a little bit of fire under it. That would just be my opinion, right? This is going to be good because I believe when I read that now there is more sellers than buyers in the housing market, which means it flipped. So prices are going to stabilize. I've got a friend in Philadelphia. He already said some of the rent prices he's seen there. I think one came down to $300. I know $300 is it's not that's a lot of money if you're a renter. Anybody really. So I know that is coming. Gas prices here in Michigan have stabilized. I believe I paid $2.90 something for gas today. So not too bad. It's stabilized. I would say like the range has been a lot more stable the last couple months. So, that's always a good thing. It lets you plan a little bit better. I believe, I don't think last time we purchased some beef at the store, I don't think the prices had changed too much. So, we'll go from there on that one. Let's dive into one of the issues of the day. Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not a fan of Jimmy Kimmel, not at all. I think he has some bad taste. He's obviously biased, which we all got a little biased, but he is like, boom. I mean, Trump could be literally like handing out a gajillion dollars and still somehow it'd be this evil plot. I have to agree with his tone, his politics, and how he approaches these kind of stories, right? But however, his action pulling the show off the air indefinitely under pressure from the government is hitting a very concerning line. If the government or regulators are influencing what can be aired based on a political viewpoint or pressure from one side, that's a dangerous precedent for free speech and media independence. I don't even know if really, maybe media independence is the way to go about it. But, whether you like Kimmel or not, what matters is whether the principle of open discourse is preserved. I don't think that he was trying to celebrate his death or anything. I mean, if he would have tried to look beyond his political bias, he would have seen that, what the MAGA was saying is that person was a trans person, that he was dating, right? And he was not, okay, yes, it was. But the problem is as soon as the news hit that he came from a Republican family, people on the opposite side jumped. And they're like, oh, see. Well, neither side waited for all the facts to come out. Everybody jumped the gun, which in a situation like that is going to happen. So the problem is he continued it, even though the facts say differently. So, that's a bad on Jimmy Kimmel's part, but I think canceling him from that because I didn't get the impression he was celebrating Charlie Kirk's death or trying to degrade it or anything of that nature. I think he was saying, hey, MAGA people, look, it was one of your own type of thing, right? And I get it. Sensitive time, bad timing to say something like that. But I don't know if that's something he should be canceled over. Especially if it's from the government, right? People don't like it, don't watch. From my understanding, it may be on something else that he did, maybe behind the scenes or something, but from what I could see, he did not celebrate his death. Nothing of that nature that other people were losing their jobs over. This is very borderline. I don't know if it's something that I would have done if I was an executive there, but again, I'm not them. And I'm not saying one way or the other, maybe there's more to it, but from what I understand, I'm not saying he shouldn't have been canceled, or it's just you're approaching that free speech line very thin right there. I mean, that is very thin. But closing, right? we're going to close this up. But, these stories, no matter how polarized and public discourse has become within the conservative sphere, we got Owens versus Ackman versus, Charlie Kirk's legacy, right? Between politics and violence, in economic policy, the Fed's trying to navigate inflation, the jobs, political pressure, and media. What host can or can't say without risks of being taken off the air. The stakes are rising, not just in who is right, but who gets to speak, to act, and to decide. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is Joe from the Middle Ground Mike. Have a good one.